All right, let's talk about owning a piece of a company. I mean, what does that actually mean? Well, today we're going to break it all down using a really simple idea a pie. Yep, a pie. It's honestly the best way to wrap your head around what it means to own a slice of a business. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever, looked at a company you really admire? Maybe it's the one that makes your phone or your favorite sneakers, or even just the place you get your coffee every morning, and thought, man, I wish I could be a part of that success story. That feeling, that's exactly where we're starting. Well, that desire to be a part of it, it actually has a name, an equity share. And really, all it is a tiny little piece of ownership in a company. Just think of it like this. It's your very own slice of a much, much bigger pie. Okay, but hold on. That kind of begs a question, right? Why would a company, especially a successful one, want to sell off little pieces of itself to begin with? It seems a bit strange. So let's flip this around for a second and look at it from the company's perspective. The answer, in one word, is money. But it's not just any kind of money. See, when a company issues shares, they're raising what's called permanent long-term capital. The key here is permanent. This is not a loan they have to pay back, ever. It's cash with no strings attached, no maturity date, that they can then use to fuel their biggest ambitions. We're talking major growth, new research, global expansion, all that good stuff, without that constant pressure of a loan payment hanging over their head. And this right here, this is the crucial difference between being an owner and just being a lender. As an equity holder, you are an owner, simple as that. Your potential return, it's variable. It goes up if the company's profits go up. And your investment, the company never has to pay it back. Now compare that to a debt holder. They're just a lender. They get a fixed interest payment, kind of like a bank, and if things go south, they're first in line to get their money back. It's a massive difference, and it's why balancing equity and debt is so important for a company's health. Too much debt can make a company super fragile, but equity, well, that gives them the freedom to take risks, innovate, and really grow for the long haul. Okay, so that's the company's side of the story. But what about you? Let's get back to the investor's perspective. You've bought your slice of the pie. What do you actually get for it? What are your rights as a part owner? It really boils down to two main things, two big categories of rights. First, you've got economic rights. That's all about the money, of course. And second, you have governance rights, which is all about having a voice. Let's dig into each of those. Economic rights are pretty much what they sound like. They're straightforward. If the company is doing well and decides to share the wealth, you're entitled to your slice of those profits. This usually shows up as something called a dividend. It is the most direct financial reward you get for being an owner. But being an owner isn't just about cashing checks. It's more than that. Governance rights mean you actually get a say in how the company is run. You get to vote on the big stuff, like who sits on the board of directors. You get to go to the big annual meetings. It's how management is held accountable to the people who actually own the place, you. And don't underestimate this. In the real world, when enough shareholders get together, this voting power can literally change the direction of a company. So this all sounds pretty good, right? You get a share of the profits, you get a voice, but it's not the whole story. Because with ownership, there's always two sides to the coin, reward and some very real risk. So let's talk about the fine print. Yeah, this really sums it up perfectly. It's that two-sided coin of being an owner. If the company goes under, you are the absolute last person in line to get any money back. That's the risk. But on the flip side, if that company just takes off, if it succeeds beyond anyone's wildest dreams, well, there is no ceiling. There's no limit to how much your slice of that pie could be worth. It is the ultimate high-risk, high-reward game. And here's what that risk looks like in the real world. In a total worst-case scenario, if the company has to liquidate, there is a very clear pecking order. First up are the lenders, the banks, the bondholders, then other creditors. And who's at the very end of the line? The equity shareholders. We get whatever's left over, if anything is left over at all. That's the gamble. So we've talked about the company and we've talked about the investor, but none of this happens in a vacuum, right? Let's zoom out a bit and look at the whole pie shop, the entire market ecosystem where all of this trading and owning actually happens. See, that big ownership pie isn't just owned by one type of person. It's actually sliced up between a few different groups. You've got the promoters. These are usually the founders, the early visionaries, people with huge stakes in the company. Then you have the big players, the institutional investors, like massive pension funds. And then, finally, there's us, The retail investors. That's everyday people like you and me. All of us, together, we are the market. And, of course, to make sure this whole pie shop doesn't turn into the Wild West, there have to be rules, and there are. You have regulatory bodies like the SEC here in the US, and their entire job is to enforce those rules. They make sure everything is fair and transparent, and that the rights of every single investor, from the biggest fund to the smallest individual, are protected. Honestly, this legal framework is the bedrock. It's what builds trust in the whole system. So when you bring it all together, what is an equity share? It's really so much more than just a number on a screen. It's this powerful, fascinating mix of real ownership, very real risk, and yeah, the potential for incredible reward. It's the engine that powers companies to grow, and it's the gateway that allows millions of people to be a part of that growth. Which brings me to a final question for you. Now that you really get what it means to be an owner, just think about it for a second. If you could own a piece of any company in the entire world, what story would you want to be a part of? All right, today we're going to do something really cool. We're going to follow the entire life story of a stock. I mean, from the moment it's just an idea in someone's head, all the way to it becoming something you can literally buy or sell with just a click. It really all boils down to this one simple but pretty powerful question. When you buy a stock, what are you actually buying? It's not just a ticker symbol on your screen, right? Nope. You're buying a tiny little piece of a real company, its factories, its patents, its future. So, the real mystery is, how does that piece of a company get offered up for sale to someone like you or me in the first place? Okay, to really get a grip on this, let's make it concrete. We're going to follow a made-up company. Let's call them Acorn Robotics. So picture this. Acorn has this amazing new product. They've got big dreams and a solid plan for huge growth. But, and it's a big but, like pretty much every startup out there, they have one major problem. They need cash. A lot of it. What the pros call capital to turn those dreams into reality. And that right there, that's the whole reason stocks even exist. It's all about this quest for capital. I mean, if Acorn Robotics wants to build new factories, hire a bunch of smart engineers, or start selling their stuff in other countries, they need serious long-term funding. And you know what? Issuing stock is one of the absolute best ways for a company to get its hands on that kind of money. Here's a super simple way to think about it. Just imagine Acorn Robotics is this big, delicious pie, just packed with potential. Well, by issuing stock, the original owners are basically deciding to sell off little slices of that pie to investors. In return for getting cash right now, those investors get to share in all the future success, the profits, the growth, everything. It's a classic deal, really. They give up a bit of ownership to get the capital they need to grow the whole pie. So Acorns made the call. They're going to sell slices of the pie. But obviously, they can't just go set up a little stand on the sidewalk. To offer these shares to absolutely everyone, they have to make this huge leap from being a private company owned by just a handful of people to a public one where literally millions of investors can own a piece. And how do they do that? Well, that's where the famous IPO comes in, the initial public offering. You can think of it as the company's big coming out party. It is the very first time Acorn Robotics sells its shares to the general public. It's the moment they officially step onto the stock market stage. But here's the thing. The IPO is really just the start. Once a company is public, they've got this whole toolkit for raising more money down the road. They can sell more shares later in what's called an FPO, or they can give their existing shareholders a special deal with a rights issue. They can even sell a big chunk of shares directly to a few large institutions, which is a private placement. The main thing to remember is that companies have a bunch of different options to get more cash, and they just pick the right tool for the job. Okay, so Acorn Robotics is all set for its big IPO. But this brings up, well, literally the $1,000,000 or maybe $1,000,000,000 question. What's the price tag? How much is one single share actually worth? Figuring out that starting number is a huge deal, super complex, and it usually happens in one of two main ways. So you've got two main roads to get to that price. First, there's the fixed price method. It's pretty straightforward. The company and its bankers just pick a single price, say $20 a share, and that's the price for everyone. But what's way more common these days is the book building method. With this one, they give a price range, like maybe $18 to $22, and then they let the big institutional investors place bids. The final price gets set based on how much demand there is. It's basically a way to let the market itself tell you what the price should be. All right, let's switch gears for a second. Let's put on our investor hats. We just saw how the company comes up with a price. But for you, as an investor, your job is totally different. You're not just accepting their price. You're trying to figure out what the company's true value is. That IPO price, it's just the starting gun. What you're really hunting for is the company's genuine, long-term worth. And that brings us to this really important idea called intrinsic value. Now, this has nothing to do with a stock price you see on any given day. Intrinsic value is all about figuring out what the business is actually worth, based on all the cash and profits it's probably going to make for years and years to come. And the whole game for a smart investor, it's to buy a stock for a price that's less than that true intrinsic value. So, is there a quick way to get a feel for a company's valuation? For sure. One of the most common tools out there is the PE ratio, which stands for price to earnings. All it does is compare the stock price to how much profit the company makes. So if you see a really high PE, it means investors are paying a lot today because they're betting on huge growth in the future. They're buying into the story. A low PE, on the other hand, well, it could mean expectations are lower, or you might have just stumbled onto a bargain. Boom, the IPO is a huge success. Acorn Robotics got the money it needed, the opening bell has officially rung, but hold on, the story is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning. Now the stock starts its new life out in the wild, being bought and sold thousands of times a day on the open market. And this is where the big stock exchanges, like the NYSE or the NASDAQ, come into play. Think of them as giant marketplaces that do two really, really important things. First, they provide liquidity, which is just a fancy word for being able to buy or sell your shares super easily. And second, they provide price discovery. That's the constant back and forth between buyers and sellers that figures out a fair price from moment to moment. And that's exactly what makes those stock charts go up and down all day long. Yeah, once a stock is out there trading, its price gets knocked around by, well, everything. Of course, the company's own profits are a huge factor, but so is what's happening in its entire industry, changes in interest rates, breaking news from halfway across the world, even just the general mood of all the investors out there, what we call market sentiment. You've got all these different forces constantly pushing and pulling on the price. But what actually happens when you hit that buy button on your app? It's basically a three-step dance. First, you place your order. That's you telling your broker what you want to do. Second, your broker goes out and finds a seller on the exchange. That's called execution. And finally, the really important part, settlement. This is where a company you never see, called a clearing corporation, steps in to make absolutely sure the shares land in your account and the money gets to the seller. That final step, that guarantee, is what makes the whole system work. And when you step back, it's a pretty amazing transformation, isn't it? A stock starts its life just as a tool for a company to raise money. Then it becomes this publicly traded thing with a price tag. And finally, it turns into this living, breathing asset whose value is being shaped every single day by the choices of millions of people all over the globe. So there you have it. We've followed the entire journey, from a simple idea all the way to a traded stock. You get the mechanics now. Which, of course, leaves us with the biggest question of all. How do you take all this and use it to spot the next big thing, the next great company? Well, that's a whole other journey. Thanks for watching. All right, let's talk about building wealth. Today, we're going on a journey, and our destination is a really solid understanding of how equity investing can work for you. But let's start with a big idea. What if you could own a piece of the future? See, at its heart, investing in stocks isn't just about numbers going up and down. It's about owning a small part of the companies that are actually shaping our world. It's your chance to be part of their growth story. So every journey has a destination, right? A prize at the end. For us, that prize is creating wealth. And there are really two fundamental ways that stocks help you get there. Let's break them down. Okay, so it really boils down to this. On one side, you have capital appreciation. This is the classic buy low, sell high. You buy a share for, say, $10, the company does well, it grows, and years later, that share is worth $50. That $40 difference, that's your profit. Then, on the other side, there's dividend income. You can think of this as a reward for being an owner. The company makes a profit, and they share a little piece of it directly with you, giving you a steady stream of cash. And this right here is the absolute game changer. Unlike a savings account or a bond that pays you a fixed, predictable rate, equities don't have a ceiling. A great company can innovate and grow beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And as an owner, your investment can grow right along with it. That unlimited potential is what makes this so powerful. So, Why does this all matter to you? Well, because this isn't just some abstract financial theory. This is the engine that can power your biggest life goals. We're talking about building real wealth over the long haul, planning for a comfortable retirement, or just making your overall financial picture stronger and more resilient through diversification. Okay, but let's be real for a second. No great journey is a walk in the park. The path to building wealth has its perils, and the absolute best way to get through them is to understand them from the get-go. So let's talk about risk. First up, we've got market risk. Think of this like the weather on your journey. It affects everybody. These are the big, sweeping forces, like the economy as a whole or major world events, that are totally out of any one company's control. It's the risk you take just by being out on the open sea of the market. Now let's zoom in a bit to business risk. If market risk is the weather, this is the seaworthiness of your specific ship. How is the company you invested in doing? Is management making smart decisions? Is a new competitor about to steal their thunder? This is all about the health of that one single business. Then there's something called liquidity risk. You ever try to sell something and crickets? No one's buying? That's kind of what this is. You might own shares in a company, but if there aren't many buyers out there, you could get stuck, unable to sell and turn your investment back into cash when you need it. And finally, we come to what might be the most dangerous risk of them all, behavioral risk. This one has nothing to do with the market or the company. It has everything to do with us. It's that little voice in your head that tells you to panic and sell when everyone else is panicking. It's the human factor. And this quote from the legendary investor Benjamin Graham just says it all, doesn't it? Often, the biggest challenge we face in investing is mastering our own emotions and getting out of our own way. Okay, so we know the goal and we know the dangers. So how do we find our way? Well, you learn to look for clues. Companies are constantly sending out signals about what they're doing and where they're headed, and these are called corporate actions. We can pretty much group these clues into three buckets. First, you have actions that create more shares, like a stock split, which makes each share cheaper and easier for more people to buy. Second, you have actions that put cash back in shareholders' pockets, like those dividends we talked about. And third, you have the big, game-changing restructuring moves, like one company buying another, which can totally transform a business. And remember, these aren't just boring administrative details. They are powerful signals. A company that consistently increases its dividend is basically shouting that it's confident about the future. A smart investor learns how to read these signals to get a better sense of what's really going on. Which brings us to the final part of our journey today, the playbook. You understand the prize, you know the perils, you can even read the clues. Now you need a strategy to tie it all together. Now, at the highest level, there are two main ways to think about this. You've got value investing. These investors are like detectives or bargain hunters. They're looking for good, solid companies that the market has somehow overlooked or unfairly beaten down. Then you have growth investing. These are the futurists. They're looking for the next big thing, the innovators, the disruptors, and they're willing to pay up for that explosive potential. But you know what? It doesn't really matter which camp you're in. Any good playbook, any successful strategy is built on these essential tools. Diversification, so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Analysis, so you're making decisions based on data, not just a hunch. Patience, because you have to be able to ride out the stormy seas. And most important of all, your strategy has to be aligned with your own personal goals. And if you need a reminder why having a long-term playbook is so critical, just look at this. This is the magic of compounding. It's where your money starts making its own money. After 5 years, sure, you see some growth. That's nice. But look what happens when you stretch it to 15 years, and then 30. The growth isn't a straight line. It starts to curve up, becoming exponential. That's where real wealth is built. So as we wrap this up, just remember this one thing. Success in the stock market isn't about getting lucky or finding a hot tip. It's a discipline. It's built on a foundation of knowledge, having the patience to see your strategy through, and making smart, strategic decisions instead of emotional ones. So, we've covered the destination, the dangers, the clues, and the strategy. The playbook is right here, in your hands. The only question left is, are you ready to start your journey?